All right, so I'm here with Livia, and you're having some trouble with your horse, Jake. And could you just describe to us a little bit of some of the challenges you're having with him, why you invited me out here?
Yeah, well, Jake is my very first horse, so I have no experience with horses before. He gets very nervous and he spooks. I cannot really control him.
Have you had any accidents or incidents with him of where it was like, okay, this is becoming dangerous if he continues this?
Yeah, there was this one day that he spooked when he was cross-tied. He spooked with the hay cart and he reared up and hit his head on the lamp.
Is there any groundwork that you would show us that you kind of have trouble with when you have him online?
Yeah, well, I told you about the lunge line.
Yeah. And do you feel like this is an issue, that him pushing you with his nose?
Yes, it is an issue. And he does that all the time.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's an issue.
Yeah, he hit my nose just the other day.
Would you agree if I said it makes sense that we should establish some leadership with him on the ground before riding?
Yes.
Like that makes sense to you?
Totally.
Okay.
Don't.
So what you have to me is a lot of rapport with him, like he's your friend, but I don't see much respect. And when I say respect, it's not respect as in like, I respect you as a human, you respect me. It's not like that. It's not the same. Respect is appropriate response to pressure. And so if you're going to deal with a horse being a prey animal, they're going to have prey animal behaviors, which means they're going to spook sometimes, they're going to go too fast sometimes, they're going to have reactions to things. And that's when the rapport goes out the window and you're left with, in that moment, will they have an appropriate response to pressure for us to control them and then resolve that and then move on. Horses aren't ever going to be just perfect where they never do those things. And so things are going to come up, sometimes a lot, sometimes only a little bit, but we need to establish that respect and control when things are going well. Because it's basically like I can see you have very little control over him right now when things are going well. If you went out on a trail and he got more spooky, or if there was more things happening, than us just standing here in the arena, you would have really no control. And so that's not going to be safe for you. But it's also going to lead to him being more anxious. And so I'm going to show you some ways on us having that leadership role for him. Because with horsemanship, there's two main things that we're doing. One is building confidence and one is working on yields. And that's what when you're backing him up there, you're trying to get a yield. And that's what is not really working right now. But confidence-wise, he seems pretty confident, especially we just walked a long ways from the barn, away from the other horses, and we're out here. And so it's not really a confidence issue. It's more of he needs to see us as the leader. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to help you out here before you get mauled too much. But one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is switch over to a rope halter. So you see it, this is very light, but it's very thin. And so it's just going to be a little bit harder for him to lean on. So I'm going to have more of an advantage there of getting him to yield off the pressure. The second adjustment we're going to make is I'm going to play a little game with him called owning space. And so when he's pushing you and you're backing up, he's claiming your space. And in horse language, that means he's the leader. And so he's already testing it with me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wave my stick here, and I'm just going to say to him, this is my space. And he doesn't need to trot around. I'm just going to establish, and see there he tries to test it again. And so I'm just waving my stick and just saying that it's going to be uncomfortable if you're in this space. I don't want it to mean circle, so I'm just going to interrupt him if he tries circling. But you can think he's anticipating lunging there a little bit. And then I'm going to walk somewhere, and I'm going to do that same game. So I'm just going to stop, and then I'm going to wave my stick again and establish my personal space. So you can see it's not hard to do. It doesn't take a lot. And I don't think he's a bad horse at all in any way or overly pushy. It's just a matter of you communicating to him, hey, there's a boundary here that you can't come into. And as a rule of thumb, to be safe with a horse on the ground, I would rather the idea be, if you want to be closer to him than your arm, the arm's length, that you would have to walk into his space or ask him to come into yours. But for me, when I'm working with horses, I work with a lot of dangerous horses that have a lot of bad habits. And so as a general rule, for me to stay safe around them, I don't let them any closer than my arm's length unless I ask them or I go into their space. But I never accept them just coming in when I didn't ask them to. Now, if I was ready to groom him, to saddle him or something like that, I would go into his space, or if you want him to follow you around, you could invite him in. Does that make sense? But to just allow him to come into your space and then retreat out of it is going to encourage him that he's actually the one in charge. So in horse language, whoever's moving the other one's feet is the boss. So I like that. That was a little bit better response. He started stopping a little earlier. The next level of this would be, I'm going to walk through his space, okay? So I'm going to pick a line directly through him. And again, if I'm the alpha horse, I'm not going to walk around him to go over there. I'm going to go through him. If I wanted to pet him, my life would come down, I would relax, I would walk in, and I would go to pet him with the stick. Now, he misread my energy there, or my intention. So I can see where this is where the spookiness comes up a little bit. So that's also a hole in his foundation. He didn't read my intention, and he needs to learn that. He needs to know when we're just hanging out, petting, saddling, moving around, it's safe. He doesn't need to feel like he needs to kick or get defensive. So there he got very defensive when my stick came towards him. And so that's a bit of an issue. So he needs to more confidence with my tool, with my stick and string. But I start with the owning space and moving his feet first, because I need to be safe that if he gets bothered at some point that he will be out of my space, not come through me, okay? So even though he is intimidated by the stick, I'm still gonna move forward with him, asking him to move off the line, because we need to start with that for safety's sake. So I'm gonna wave my stick, and I'm gonna walk on a line, and I'm just gonna ask him to move off that line. And then I'm gonna continue walking on the line. So by me walking on this line and just going back and forth across the arena, it creates a predictable pattern. So like here, if I go to walk off the line, he's moving off it, no problem. So this is good. This means he doesn't want to be in charge at all. So I don't need to do that a bunch. So that's good. I am going to spend a little bit of time here petting him with the stick, and maybe test throwing this over his back here. Now I'm going to block him there if he tries to go forward. If he gets scared of it and he goes forward, a horse can go forward and be scared for a really long time. And so I'm going to interrupt him for going forward by just lifting up and kind of bumping on that halter a little bit. If he were to back up or retreat kind of in that way, I would just follow him then, because they're not going to back up for a very long time. He's also a little bit more intimidated with me on his right side than his left side, which is pretty common. Most horses get handled more on the left side than the right, because he went to block me there with his nose. So for me, this is teaching him to read my intention versus the energy of the stick and string. And everybody would love their horse to know this, that if you're calm, your horse will be calm. But you have to train them to make that true. They don't just come out of the box understanding that if you're calm, oh, I can be calm too. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, the next thing that is important for you to understand is if he does get afraid, you need to ask him to yield his hindquarters. The opposite of getting powerful, ready to react, is to disengage. And even in the word disengage, it explains what it is it's doing. It's taking the power down. So I'm gonna ask him to yield his hindquarters now. So I've changed my intention. Can you kind of see that? Like I get more serious, and I'm asking him to move here. There we go. Now I like how soft, see how slow and soft his feet are moving? That's a great time to quit. If you go to yield his hindquarters and his feet are fast and reactive, don't stop. Keep going. Because horses kind of live in different mindsets. And so if he's in a reactive mindset, you don't want to release the pressure. If he gets calm, then you want to release the pressure. Okay? So now I'm going to switch to petting him again. And with him, because he's not real familiar with the tools that I'm using, I would alternate it like every time. I'd yield the hindquarters, now I come back and rub him. And I like how quickly he adjusted to that. He didn't get afraid of it. He's letting me pet him, his head's down. Now I'm gonna switch. So I changed my intention. Now I'm asking him to yield again. And this would be what I would call a recovery strategy. So this is something that you would want to teach a horse proactively ahead of time when things are going well, like today, so that if someday you're leading him, you're doing something, and he gets bothered and upset, you can go back to that exercise and say, hey, recover, settle down. You don't have to be worried about that. So now there he's looking away from me, so I'm gonna go ahead and yield his hindquarters. Because one of the things I also want you to be aware of is expecting him to pay attention to you. if you're keeping him busy, giving him something to think about, he will have less time to be spooky. But if you're not aware of when he goes, what's that over there, and you don't do anything about it, well, the next thing is him deciding if something over there should spook him or not. So if he does that look right there and you go ahead and redirect his attention back to you, not aggressively or anything, but all I took was just talked him out of it, well, now he's back with me. Now, we did discover there's a couple of spots on him that are a little bit goosey, a little bit touchy, more so than I would like. To me, he needs a higher tolerance of things, especially at his age, of things touching his hindquarters. So if you were trail riding and a branch kind of brushed his leg, that could cause him to react just based on this string touching him and him reacting to it. So I'm gonna go take some time to reinforce that idea of energy versus intention with a couple of other tools. So one other one would be just taking the end of the lead rope here. And so like there, he's a little bit worried. And so I'm gonna wait for him to recover. So you watch and see if you can see when he's trying to be calm. There his feet got quieter, so I'll retreat there. And there he licked and chewed. So when he got worried and he started backing up, I kept going. And a lot of people's instincts would tell them to stop, like I'm scaring him, so I should stop. But you have to pick a level of pressure that is achievable. Okay, so this bothered him a little bit. And then because I stopped it when he got, when his feet got still, he got more comfortable with it. Now I'll just take the rope and throw it over his back. There. So that's pretty good. Would you mind handing me that flag behind you? So the flag is more noisy, not like literally, but it's visually, it's more pressure. And so you can see it's already got his attention. And so again, the flag is gonna have a lot of energy, a lot of life in it, but my intention is gonna be calm. And so he should follow my intention, not the flag. So if he gets scared here, you see I just tipped his nose towards me because he thought about running off there a little bit. And there, the flag is in his bubble, but he's trying to be calm, trying to recover, so I'll take it away at that moment. On my, I have a Patreon page, and on my YouTube channel, I show a lot of like horses getting experience with different things and problem solving, like kind of more pizza by the slice. On my Patreon page, I have a whole program that people can follow. It's a fundamental series that just shows like step by step all things. I would really recommend that you take him through that. If you did, there's about 7 video series on the ground and 7 riding. It would take you probably about a month if you did it every day, or 2 months if you did it, you know, a couple, 2-3 times a week to get through. One of the things that I have to consider when I'm playing with these horses is trying to decide what's achievable for the owner versus what should somebody else work with. And I've only seen him for this morning, but my recommendation to you would be to put him in training with somebody for a little while, maybe at least a month, maybe a little longer, depending on how far you want him. Lessons and stuff would obviously be great. Following the Patreon page would be great. But there's going to be a point where there's a day where it's windy, it's cold out like today, and something can happen. And I personally would just feel more comfortable recommending to you that he did have some training with somebody before you continue. And that would just help him get a little bit over the hump. And then if he did that while you were also learning some of these fundamental things and doing that with him, I think that would bring you guys, that would just close that gap a little bit. Because right now, your skill set and where he's at in training, there's a little bit of a gap there. I'm going to do a couple more things with him here. I'd like to address how pushy he was with the halter. And so I'm going to put a little feel on this here. Essentially, I'm just using the stick to reinforce the halter. So if he pushes on the halter, I add my stick. If he doesn't push on the halter, then I don't add the stick. Good. There. All right, so that went pretty well. One more thing I'm going to do. Can you hand me that rope behind you? So I'm going to do this because of him being goosey around his hind legs with the rope touching him. So this one is just, I'm going to ask him to wear it. Again, to me, these are all things that I do when I'm starting colts and like just baby horse preparation stuff. But to me, this is just kind of some basics that it doesn't take that much time to get them used to it and can kind of make a big difference. So you can see how he's not comfortable with it yet. And so it's going to stay on there. It's just gonna follow him. Now there you see him walk calmer. Now I'll release the pressure. So now I'm gonna put it in a little harder spot. So again, first is just wear it. I just hold my hand up so it doesn't slide down their leg. I like to have it above their hock because if they were to kick, it won't pull on my arm as much. If it's down lower on their leg, you know, there's not as much muscle there. And if they kick, it really jerks your hand a lot. Now I'm gonna put a feel on it and release. So that was good. I expected him to have a bigger reaction to that. That was a good response. At the end of the day, he needs to have really good yields and he needs to read the human's intention versus energy. If he does that really well, you can bypass a lot of individual things that you could get a horse used to. I like efficiency. And so I pick a handful of things that are pretty scary, like the flag, the stick and string, a lariat rope, maybe add in a tarp or a feed sack in there. And you can really cover your bases with just a handful of tools that are all pretty cheap to deal with. You know, you don't have to go build this crazy amount of obstacles to do that. Now again, he's crowding me just a little bit. And he wasn't being naughty there, he was being inquisitive. But like I said, for 5 days, 5 training sessions, I would establish, hey, this is my personal space. Taking lessons would be a great thing to do, but I still think he needs a little bit of work. You need to learn those things. In a perfect world, you would have kind of a more experienced horse that you could practice on a little bit. But if he got that experience from a trainer and then you continued and kept up with the groundwork, that would be a good situation as well. And I have a couple trainers in the area I can recommend. I think you're actually going to have a very natural propensity for this. What I saw with you is I saw you wanting to connect with him and build a relationship and even doing the Liberty and having some success with some things with fairly limited knowledge. But then I also saw you be assertive to Magic and say, hey, you need to not be here and be out of the gate. A lot of people struggle with that. They really struggle to say, excuse you, I don't need you to be here right now. And I don't see you having any trouble with that. The way you were, handled him earlier, and that, to me, it was more you just didn't know what's acceptable and what's not. And so I have very high hopes and expectations for you guys. I think you're gonna do great. But I do think by following some of the advice I'm giving you, it'll be a safer process. And that's, I think, what's the most important thing.